Welcome to The Reconnect with Carmen LaBerge. We're applying the mind of Christ to the matters of the day so that you can connect the eternal with the everyday and get ready to head out into the world that God so loves in ways that honor Jesus. So let's get started. This is The Reconnect.
Encouraging you to live as an ambassador of God's kingdom in the world.
This is The Reconnect with Carmen LaBerge on Faith Radio.
If we're gonna fly, we fly like eagles, arms out wide. If we're gonna fear, we fear no evil. We will rise. By your power we will go. By your spirit we are bold. If we're gonna stand, we stand as giants. If we're gonna walk, we walk as lions.
Hello, my friend. This is hour 2 of The Reconnect. If you missed the first hour, you can always go back and listen to it as a podcast. You can do that at myfaithradio.com, myfaithpodcast.com, carmenlaberge.com. Like, we make it easy. You could subscribe to The Reconnect with Carmen wherever you get your podcast, and then you'll never miss an episode. So what's new this morning? What's new every morning? What's new with you this morning? How are you new this morning? Those might be questions, conversations that you could have with others throughout the day. What's new every morning? God's mercies are new every morning. Amen. So are the headlines of the day. And yet some days you read the headlines and you're like, there's nothing new there. I mean, it's being pitched as news, but there's no new news there. And so in the midst of that, could we be prepared to talk about the mercies of God that are new every morning? If the headlines really are just a rehearsal, or a regurgitation, or, the spin cycle one more time, could you find a way to get God into a conversation? His mercies are new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. I was a little bit troubled by a recent survey by Lifeway Research, evidence of a real and substantial disconnect for most church-going Americans. I'm not talking here about a disconnect for people that don't go to church. I'm talking about a survey, a discipleship survey. It's called the State of Discipleship, where church-going people, they admit they're not actually talking with other people about their faith in Jesus Christ. In fact, it's like a hidden reality. So Lifeway's State of Discipleship survey has revealed that for a lot of U.S. Protestant churchgoers, they don't see their faith as something that's pervasive throughout their lives. And they are not concerned if other people do not know that they are Christians. Like, literally, it's a concealed identity. There's a lot of room for growth. That's the way I will describe this. If you were going to talk about where's an area of growth, of discipleship for American church-going people, this would clearly be one. There is clearly room for growth in this area of our life. A third of those who go to church are basically doing so in secret. 30% of people surveyed. So these are church-going people. 30% say that most people who know them are not aware they are Christians. And they don't think it's necessary or important for other people to know that they are followers of Jesus. Just think about that for just a moment. If the people in your life, the people you work with, your neighbors, your colleagues, your friends, they don't know you're a Christian, that is a serious disconnect. I would call that a very effective compartmentalization. Like, right, you have put Jesus in, one compartment and you've locked him there. Maybe you're like, well, yes, I have received Jesus as my Savior. And so, yes, he's, on the throne of my heart. He's taken care of my sin and death problems. But Jesus is not the name you're wearing around. So you put him on and you take him off. That's what you're saying. You hear that, right? That for you, If you are in this 30% of church-going people who say that other people aren't aware that you're a Christian and you don't think it's necessary or important for other people to know that you're a follower of Jesus, you are saying Jesus is for me a put on. I put him on so that I, show up for church and then I take him back off. That is a problem. That is a problem. Jesus is not a put on. Jesus says in John 15, this is Jesus speaking, I am the vine and my Father's the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. Now, you're already clean because of the word that I've spoken to you. Remain in me. Remain in me, and I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. This is Jesus as the source of life, the intimate way that we are reconnected with the Father, the way that we are animated by the Spirit of the living God, this intimate union, the union in Christ, the union with Christ. That's what's in view here. Not Jesus as a put on. He goes on, this is verse 5. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you're like a branch thrown away, withers. Those branches, they're going to be picked up and thrown into the fire and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, you're in a position to ask whatever you want, and it'll be done for you. You're literally in Christ. Jesus says, this is to my Father's glory that you may bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. Showing yourselves to be my disciples, not obscuring the fact that you're a follower of Jesus, not keeping it hidden in some way. The Christian faith is a show and tell faith. Literally, show and tell. Jesus says so in Matthew 5 during the Sermon on the Mount. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, which is this whole obscured Christian faith thing. People don't do that. You put it on a stand. It gives light to everybody in the house. In the same way, Jesus says, let your light, which is really his light, shine before others, so that in seeing your good works, they'll give glory to the Father who is in heaven. So part of this is a glory problem. If you are getting glory for things that are really due Christ, I don't want to be robbing God of his glory. Let me just say that about myself. I want God to be getting the glory all the time, in every way. So what does it look like at work? What does it look like? What does it sound like on a Zoom call? What does it look like when you're making the rounds? What does it look like in your neighborhood at the Memorial Day picnic? What does it look like this summer at your family reunion or at your class reunion this fall? What does it look like? If no one knows you're a Christ follower, then how are you functionally fulfilling the call of God in your life to be shiny, to go and make disciples? I mean, I'm literally asking, how is that working for you? Jesus doesn't belong in some compartmentalized box of your life. I mean, he's Lord of the whole house. He's Lord of your mind and your heart and your hands and your heart and, all your body parts, all of it, all your time, all your talents, all your treasures, all of it. Every thought, word, and deed is what God wants. So let him have it. 2 weeks ago was officially Teacher Appreciation Week. We missed celebrating it in some way, but it's never too late to talk about the value of our teachers and show our appreciation for them. So that's what we'll do with Bill English next. You're listening to The Reconnect. Hey, our friend Bill English is here from BibleandBusiness.com, as well as On Path Coaching and OnPathCounseling.com. Hey, Bill, welcome back.
Hey, Carmen, it's good to be back. It's been, what, 4 or 5 weeks since we've talked
That's
to each
too
other, I
long.
think.
Had I fallen off a
Yes.
ladder, but prior to that, that's my new like before and after. I mean, like, did it happen before I fell off the ladder, or have we talked since then?
I don't know. I don't know, but
Well,
it's
there you
good to
go.
be back on the air with you.
We're so glad to have you. So, your doctor urged you to quit teaching for your health. Now, that's not you. That is someone else reflecting on her own experience. But let's talk about teachers and teacher appreciation. It was a couple of weeks ago, but there is a struggle for mental health among teachers. Could we touch on that?
There is, and that is because of the increased stress. And I think the demands that teachers are under, you can say this, you can't say that, you can do this, you can't do that. And then another group comes along and says, no, you can't do the former, you got to do the latter. And I think teachers get caught in the middle quite a bit.
Hmm.
Some of them are activists, but many of them are just really well-meaning, good folk, who want to do a good job of teaching in the classroom. They care about their students. They love their students. They love teaching. And I think they get caught in the middle quite a bit.
So I have a middle school teacher in my Sunday school class, and I ask her this question. Her eyes are almost hollow this time of year because it is it's so exhausting. And I mean, I have on my Thursday prayer list, I have like every teacher who I know because by Thursday, like they don't want to be in the classroom anymore. And so, just renewed energy and strength. They're expected to juggle so many roles. And that was the conversation I had with her. She's like, it's no longer that, I'm just teaching a curriculum. I am teaching every individual child, and every single one of those individuals has got all their own constellation of things going on. They also each need a mentor. They each need a counselor. In many cases, they need parents. And it's more than the emotional load, that one person can bear. And so, uh, you know, I don't know, encouragement. How could we encourage teachers who they are exhausted, especially this time of year? And school's not quite out in most places across the country. In some places, it's already summer. But just talk with us a little bit about how we might encourage educators, especially in this area of mental health.
Well, yeah, actually, that's several different topics there we could spend
Well, you could just
several
pick
different
one.
Wednesdays
It's
on.
like a grab bag.
It is a grab bag. You know, my mom was a teacher for 33 years, principal for 20 of those 33. And she used to tell me that you got to teach to the highest level of the class, not the lowest common denominator.
Mm.
And uh, I think many schools really want the teachers to teach to the lowest common denominator to be as inclusive as possible. But then the students who could excel more really get less of an education that way. Look, in terms of encouragement, what I would say is know your role and know why God has you in the classroom and your role there. And I'm not a teacher, so I may be off base here, but your role is to teach, it's to educate, it's also to craft character development of your students. But there are things that are going to be put on these teachers where they've got to, break up fights. They've got to see how well the kids are doing on standardized tests. And somehow that becomes a reflection on how good the teaching is. They may have to report suspected child abuse and, maybe holding an intervention on bullying and talking about the social aspects because sin is on the rise in our culture. The only way I know to handle that kind of stress, where you have all of these disparate and yet somewhat connected demands on you, whether it's teaching or another job, is to spend extra time with God, just enjoying His presence and letting Him fill you with his encouragement, with his sweetness, with his attaboys, so to speak, or his pats on the back to you about, you're doing the best you can, and God understands that, and he loves you and is delighted in you anyways, even when you might fail a little bit. I have found, because my job is, as you know, as a psychologist, it's stressful sometimes, and I have found that getting away a couple of times a day and no books, no screens, no nothing, and just being in the presence of God and enjoying Him is one of the most life-giving and encouraging things that I do, and it does actually lower my stress.
What reduces your stress as you're listening now? What are your practices that you employ? If you are a teacher, we'd love to hear from you. We also want to encourage you. We're going to be praying for you. The text line's open, 877-933-2484. If your deteriorating mental health is having a negative impact on your physical health, like, it's definitely time to get some help. And so we want to encourage you to do that as well if you're listening right now. We're going to pivot conversations here with Bill in just a moment, and we're going to talk about our relationships at work. And so if you're a teacher, those work relationships are at school. But if you work anywhere else, like, how do healthy relationships work? And how do healthy relationships work at work with those who we work with? So Bill has done a lot of thinking about healthy relationships because he's encountered a lot of unhealthy relationships. And so he's going to help us in this area next. You're listening to The Reconnect. Just take the first step. Just take the first step. I mean, every journey begins with a first step, right? And if you want to hike to the top of a mountain, or if you just want to, make it around the block, it all starts with a first step. Just take one step, a step out the door. Now, the same holds true in the journey of discipleship with Jesus. A relationship with Jesus actually begins with a first step. Sometimes taking that first step can be really hard, right? Well, if you've got questions about what it means to begin a relationship with Jesus, just take the first step. Text the word faith to 41224. Our friends at the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association are going to hold your hand as you take the first step or the next step in your walk of faith with Jesus. They're going to help you walk with him and talk with him. Take the first step of faith today. Text the word faith to 41224. All right, I have some really good news for you. If you do not feel like you are a person who has consistently healthy relationships, there is some really good news coming, because as you hear Bill English tell us the 5 things that healthy people do in healthy relationships, here's what you're going to discover. All of these can be learned. Is a skill set. And so Bill English is here. We'll send you the link to his LinkedIn where he has posted how do healthy relationships work. But Bill, what are the 5 things healthy people do in healthy relationships?
Yeah, the 5 things they do is, first of all, they balance grace and truth over time. They know how to give grace to other people and yet be truthful with them. And they do this consistently over time. They know how to do that also with themselves, to give grace to themselves when they mess up. And all of us mess up at one time or another, many times, multiple times. So they balance grace and truth over time. They know how to build healthy emotional attachments. There's a big thing, attachment theory, insecure attachments, disorganized, all that stuff is
I'm
really
avoidant.
popular I'm sorry?
I'm avoidant.
Are you really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
We could talk about that sometime if you want.
it's a it's a big deal, right? In psychology, this whole attachment theory. But these people know how to build healthy emotional attachments with their spouses, with friends, and with God. And they also are usually very deeply rooted in a healthy body of believers. Thirdly, they know how to build their identity and assert their boundaries. Now, I put identity and boundaries together. Identity is knowing what I think, feel, want, need, what my limits are, that kind of thing. And out of my identity, I assert my boundaries. If you do A, I'm going to do B. If, so most people think boundaries are outside of themselves, something that they go and find in the exterior environment to themselves, and then they assert them. They draw a line in the sand. I look at boundaries as an expression of my identity, my feelings, thoughts, wants, needs, limits, those kinds of things. And if you do A, I'm going to do B. That's how I look at identity and boundaries. They know how to do that pretty well because they know themselves well. They also know how to work with good and bad in themselves. This is really an interesting one because a lot of people reject the bad in themselves and try to enhance the good. And I think a lot of our preaching unwittingly encourages this. What I tell people is to pull the bad closer to yourself so that you can bring it under the transforming power of Christ. The bad that we might see in ourselves or in others, or if we see it in ourselves, if we reject it, then we can never bring it under the power of Christ. If we see bad in other people, we oftentimes react with perfectionism. I need that other person to be perfect in order for me to feel okay. And instead, I just need to accept that there's good and bad in others, there's good and bad in the world, there's good and bad in me, and I need to learn how to manage that. And finally, last but not least, they take on adult roles as they move into adulthood. We all know people who react like 15-year-old teenagers or 9-year-old children when stress hits them. They don't get stuck in childhood or adolescent ways of relating to others in the world. They move into adulthood and they take on adult roles with adult responsibilities. So those are the five.
Well, and that last one, I mean, I
That was
know, you
fast.
just blew through them. Hey, if you guys want more, I mean, like Bill actually says more in his post on LinkedIn about each of these. And so we'd love to send you the link on the text line, 877-933-2484. It's a part of his, Friday Five. And so these are the 5 things healthy people do in healthy relationships. And so we'd love to send you the link. Bill, that last one, people do get stuck sometimes developmentally in it, and sometimes it's like in one area of their life, like they don't move beyond the way of being, the way we were friends when we were in high school. Well, you have to move beyond that. Like we are not those people anymore. You are not that person anymore. And the people that you hung out with in high school, they are not who they were in high school. I mean, hopefully everybody is developing, but I do think that I observe a stuckness in terms of how some people relate because of the relationship they had with that person at a particular age and stage of life. I don't know, I'm
Agreed.
just making an
And
observation.
yeah, and I would also observe that if our theology isn't maturing, we can get stuck in immature theology. And in fact, that's what Paul or whoever wrote Hebrews kind of complains about. You should be taking on solid food, but you still need milk, right? We can remain immature and stuck in our theology. And if we do that, then our whole relationship with God, relationship with the church, relationship with the body of believers is going to get stuck too.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking there, we're supposed to grow up in every way into Christ who is the head. And so as you're listening right now, and you don't know what that means. You don't know what development as a disciple means. If when Bill says, you could get theologically stuck, like immature in your theology, well, there are ways that we talk about um, salvation even with little children. And then we talk about that same thing, that same truth in more fully developed ways as a person matures in their faith. And so you're not always meant to be an infant in terms of your discipleship. You are meant to grow up in every way into Christ. And as mature believers walk with one another, we become iron who sharpens iron. I think that there are some times, Bill, where people remain immature in their faith, immature in their theology. They're not developing. It is hard. It is hard as a body of believers to carry that person in fellowship.
You're right. It really is. And I would say that, and this is a general rule, I know I'm broad brushing here, but those who kind of live in legalism usually are those who have not matured in their faith. Because a person's faith, as they mature, necessarily becomes more nuanced and more crafted in ways that demonstrate a deeper and more broad understanding of the scriptures. A lot of people just like to kind of proof text and stay with what they know, and they're not really willing to let themselves be challenged towards a more mature, deeper faith.
That's so helpful. When we talk about being in healthy relationships, we could be talking about relationships in our home and how those develop and change over the course of time because people grow up, they move out, they move on. My guess is that allowing our children to become adults and to move into healthy relationships with them as adults beyond the primary role of parenting early in their life, like my guess is at those transition points, there's some friction and tension.
Always.
Hmm.
Always. Without what's one of the undeniable truths of business ownership? There's no traction without friction. In any
I'm writing this down.
organization,
There's no
in any
traction
organization,
without
in any
friction.
church, in any growth process, there is no traction without friction. You don't get going without some friction. And I'm thinking of several situations right now where there's a lot of friction, and I'm thinking of workplace situations that I know about. And I know the parties are thinking about, well, maybe I should go do this, or I should leave, or I should try this or that. And that. My encouragement is there's no traction, there's no movement forward without some friction.
That's good. That's probably going to be my takeaway, my thought point. That is so good. I appreciate that the way that you have framed the 5 things healthy people do in healthy relationships, that you have framed them in such a way that I'm encouraged that I could learn them. I could grow into them. I
Yes.
could learn to have balance of grace and truth consistently over time. I could learn how to build healthy emotional attachments. I could learn how to build my identity and assert boundaries. I could learn how to work with good and bad in myself, others, and the world. And I could, were I willing, take on more mature roles as I mature. Like my faith can mature and my relationships can mature in how I deal with them if I am willing to mature. Like it is good. I love the growth emphasis and I appreciate it so much.
No, yeah, you're welcome. I'll tell you that the people I work with, either on the counseling or the coaching side, who lean into these 5 things, after about 6 to 9 months, they are doing measurably, appreciably, noticeably better in
Mm,
all of their relationships, whether it's marriage, church, work, than they were when we first started to work together. And it's not me, Carmen. I'm not the miracle worker here. Christ is the miracle worker. He is
amen.
the one that brings about these changes. I'm just kind of the facilitator on the sidelines, moving the players around the football field.
Yeah.
So,
That's why we call it coaching.
praise. Yeah,
That's good.
I
That's good.
suppose that's true.
Hey, onpathcoaching.com is where you can connect with Bill English. You can also do it at onpathcounseling.com. We're going to send you a link to his LinkedIn where you can find how healthy relationships work, the 5 things healthy people do in healthy relationships. Dr. Corbin Hornbeak is going to join us next, and he is bringing a friend along with him. There's a disconnect for a lot of people out there in the workaday world where, their faith is privatized and it's not sort of a part of what they do in their everyday work. That is not true for Dr. Corbin Hornbeak, nor is it true for Dan Stoltz. And so they are going to both join us next. You're listening to The Reconnect. How does Christ get a witness in the marketplace of ideas? How does Christ get a witness in the marketplace? That is the topic of our conversation today with Dr. Corbin Hornbeak. He's the president of the University of Northwestern St. Paul, as well as Northwestern Media. And he's gracious to join us fairly frequently here on the Reconnect. And today he has brought a friend along with him. So Corbin, welcome back. And we're going to start this conversation really big picture in a subject matter area that we have spent some time with you on before, and that is this Jeremiah 29 vision of seeking the peace and prosperity of the city.
Carmen, good morning. It's so good to be here with you, and so thankful and blessed to have our dear friend Dan Stoltz with us this morning to talk about this. Dan, as some of our listeners will recognize, is the CEO, president of Blaze Credit Union, which is one of the largest financial institutions in the Twin Cities. And so this is just incredible to be here, the two of us together with you, Carmen, talking about Christ, the gospel, and the marketplace.
So Dan, welcome to the Reconnect. We're thrilled to have you here with us as well. When Corbin talks about seeking the peace and prosperity of the city, what do you love about the marketplace of ideas and the marketplace where God's called you into ministry?
Yeah. Good morning, Carmen. Thank you for having me here. Just an honor and privilege to be a part of this morning. The marketplace is just, I love the marketplace, passionate about the marketplace, and I believe that's where we can bring our faith. The marketplace is a calling, not a job. And I think once you start from that perspective and you look at the opportunities of living out your faith, the marketplace is desperately looking for leaders that care, that have integrity, and those are all of our faith principles. And when Corbin talks about Jeremiah 29, being salt, being light, having that opportunity, and it's an honor and a privilege every morning to have that privilege in the city. But I love Jeremiah 29. You talk about it all the time, Corbin.
I do. It's the passage that has shaped our vision for the entire University of Northwestern and Northwestern Media. And Carmen, I'll just maybe take a second to talk about that, and then we can jump into other things. But this, we hear often people quoting Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And it's such a great passage. It just happened to be written to a group of people that were in exile in Babylon and didn't really have much of a sense of a hope and a future. And so we get to this passage in Jeremiah 29, and Jeremiah writes this letter to the Jewish exiles who are exiled in Babylon, which is just the worst place in the worst world to ever be, exiled to. It's godless, hedonistic, and secular place that hated God's people and wanted them wiped out. And we get to this, passage before Jeremiah 29:11, and it's a letter that Jeremiah wrote to the exiles, telling them how to live in Babylon. And I love it when we get to verse 7 of this passage, because Jeremiah says this. He says, "Seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile." And it's interesting how God takes credit, even though Babylon, militarily speaking, destroyed Jerusalem and Judah. But God takes credit for placing his people in Babylon. And so that's what he says, seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. And then he says this, pray to the Lord for it. Because if it prospers, meaning Babylon, if Babylon prospers, you also will prosper. And I'm not going to preach, on this passage too long, but the point is this, that God placed his people in Babylon. They didn't just lose a battle. God placed his people in Babylon, and he told them to pray for it, to seek its peace and prosperity. And then he tells them, because if Babylon prospers, if your captors prosper, you also will prosper. And as Dan and I have talked about what is now the Stoltz School of Business at the University of Northwestern, if we've talked about that over the past several years, this passage has animated our vision for loving our city and seeking its peace and prosperity. The Hebrew word there is shalom, to seek the shalom of God for the Twin Cities. And it's a remarkable vision that God's given us to seek the peace and prosperity, not just for the Twin Cities, but for our country. So I'll leave it
I'm
at
going to
that
let
with
you.
you, Carmen.
I was going to let you pick up there, Dan.
Yeah,
Right
no,
ahead.
yeah, no. Thank you, Carmen. What I just love about that is, we're really called to be salt and light, and the marketplace has its challenges. It has its opportunities where profit can come before people. But as faith leaders in the marketplace is really, and CEOs and leaders are clamoring for value systems. They're looking for what we bring in our faith, showing up our integrity, character. I always say integrity and character is not, you don't get a letter grade. You don't get an A, B, C, or D. It's a pass or fail. And there are difficult decisions every day. I mean, every morning I pray that the Lord would give me wisdom and that I could be salt and light in those opportunities. But it's not running away from, but it's running to the marketplace. And the marketplace is just fascinating to me. I love competition. I love what it brings, but I also love the opportunities that it can also bring forward. And Corbin talks about, investing back into our communities, making a difference, loving one another, showing people you care. And those are the characteristics that workers, people in the marketplace want to be a part of. And it's quite simple, but it's that faith value stream about being versus doing.
It's so good when I think about the way God has brought together a constellation of market movers, not just Fortune 500 companies, but companies that are really moving the conversation forward in terms of commerce in America. The Twin Cities are critical. They are a Babylon of sorts in terms of, a city at the confluence of rivers and a cultural melting pot and a place from which not only are market items going forth, but ideas are being produced and going forth. And I think about not just the University of Northwestern St. Paul, but other institutions of higher learning in the Twin Cities as well, and the partnership, Corbin, that you have forged in conversation with some of those. Yep. God is on the move in the Twin Cities, and both of you are fanning the flame of that in really significant ways. So when we come back from a very brief break, I'd love to hear how, Dan, God has moved you and your family to amplify the gospel through the marketplace. We'd love an introduction to the Stoltz School of Business. If you guys are open to those conversations.
You bet.
Yes.
That sounds great. All right, you're listening to The Reconnect. We are talking with Dr. Corbin Hornbeak and Dan Stoltz. Dan is the benefactor for the Stoltz College of Business. Maybe you're not even yet familiar that, hey, that's a thing. Well, it's because it's part of what God is doing at UNW and how the gospel is being amplified in some really strategic ways. And so we're happy to celebrate along with them in this and also fan the flame of it into the future. You're listening to The Reconnect. When was the last time someone asked you to pray for them? When's the last time you asked someone to pray for you? Here at Faith Radio, we pray with and for you about the concerns in your life, and we share with you the concerns of others. We are a praying people. So we want to invite you to share your prayer request with us. Our team prays continually and intentionally once a week for the requests that we receive. And so share your prayer requests with Faith Radio by texting or calling 877-933-2484. You can share your prayer requests with us, and you can be confident that we are praying for you. As a person who attended the University of Florida and has a degree in business administration, I can tell you that it would have been great if my professors at the time had been interested in sending us out into the marketplace of ideas as not just market leaders, but people whose hearts and minds were really formed in Christ. And that's why I am so excited about the mission of the Stoltz School of Business at the University of Northwestern St. Paul. And so you can find it all at unwsp.edu. Dr. Corbin Hornbeak is here with us. He's the president of UNW and Northwestern Media, and he is joined today by Dan Stoltz. And so I'll let either of you pick this up. We want to know more about the Stoltz School of Business.
Well, maybe I'll jump in first, Carmen, and then shoot it over to Dan here. Maybe 3 years ago, we began to have conversation with Dan and his wife, Robin, about not about a gift, but about an impact, about what we might accomplish in the world. If you go back into the scriptures and you look at the movement of the gospel through the book of Acts, in the early church and the growth of the early church, how did that happen? How did the gospel move? It moved along trade routes. It moved along the Roman roads. It moved from city to city. As the marketplace expanded, so also did the gospel move. And as Dan and Robin and I and several others at Northwestern began to have conversations about their deep, deep love for Northwestern, but their deep love and desire to see the gospel move, that's when we began to envision God doing something on a larger scale, which ultimately grew into what has been the largest philanthropic gift in the history of Northwestern, from Dan and Robin, and really from their family, to establish the Stoltz School of Business. So I'll just ask you, Dan, what over the last 3 years we've had the opportunity to have conversations about the mission of what this could be, and what about it is so exciting to you?
Yeah, no, thank you, Corbin. And again, what an honor to be here. Let me just say this. This is a little bit random, but, about 30 years ago, when I graduated actually from the University of Northwestern, I really was wondering what success was. And the world would tell you it's the house you live in, the car you drive, what's the amount of money in your checking account, the clothes you wear, the friends you hang out with, even the title in front of your name. And that's hollow. And so I interviewed about 75 people that were faith leaders that really understood what success was, and really learned that it's a go-getter. You have to have that competency, but it's also that go-giving, that giving back, making a difference, loving one another, bringing your faith in the marketplace, and it's literally just living that faith in front of others. So when Corbin and I were talking about foundation building and education and students, I mean, what a great way to give back and make a difference in students' lives, and building this foundational piece where faith and business are intersecting in a very important way to think better, to live better, to lead better, and to really make a difference in the marketplace. And, it's not about margins. It's not about profit. You certainly need a margin to exist, but if you put other things first, it's what you do in front of that matters. And the marketplace is really looking for that kind of leadership. And the goal here is just to bring other students, other leaders, our future leaders, into the marketplace, really making an impact.
Dan, maybe I'll just jump in and ask you one more question here. Carmen, I'm taking over your show, and I'm asking.
Totally
fine. Dan, you talk so much about servant leadership. Talk a little bit about why that's so important.
Yeah, to me, it's about just treating others as you want to be treated, and being a servant leader. I mean, our greatest example is Jesus Christ. I mean, you look at how he served others. He met people where they're at, and to me, I think that's one of the mandates of our leadership is to serve others, to be there, to how you lead in your own organization, but then how also you should be in the community, being a leader, finding ways to impact for greater good with your faith. And it gives you a great platform to talk about your faith and your value stream for sure.
Well, this is, Carmen, one of the most exciting things that we've had the privilege of doing and being part of. I think of the University of Northwestern, been around for 124 years. And for 124 years, this organization has been committed not just to doing higher education and getting people degrees. Lots of people do that. You can do that in a lot of different places, in a lot of different ways, and probably for less expensive and maybe even better weather than here in Minnesota. So we're not really interested in getting people degrees. We're interested in shaping leaders. And yes, we want people to earn all kinds of degrees, but the heart of this and the heart of the Stoltz School of Business is to prepare leaders. That's what the world needs more than anything, is not people with a degree in business administration, but a degree in leadership, a degree in servant leadership, Christ-like leaders who are equipped and prepared to transform the world for Christ. And honestly, to be able to go into any boardroom in America and stand up, stand strong, stand for their faith, to be able to compete at the highest levels, but also to do that with the level of competency that's required and the level of character that Christ requires, Carmen.
Well, it's thrilling, Dan, to have you here with us today. Thank you so much on behalf of the UNW family and future generations and those who will be impacted through the ripple effect of the gift that your family has made and your investment in not only the future of this institution, but like all that God intends to do. I mean, the genuine amplification of the gospel through the marketplace. And so thank you for being with us today on the Reconnect. Obviously, Corbin, thank you as always to you as well.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Carmen.
Absolutely. All right, friends, as you're listening right now, maybe you could just give a little thought to, instead of being a go-getter today, what would it look like in your own life to be a go-giver? Like, what would that look like? What would it look like for you to add value in the places that you go instead of just, trying to get something from somebody else? Or what might it look like today for you to steward the influence of your life in the lives of others? What would it look like for you to really give yourself in ways that are glorifying to God, that the gospel might be amplified in and through your own life? So we talk about that here from time to time on the Reconnect, acknowledging that each and every one of us is an ambassador of the King and the kingdom in the midst of the kingdoms of this world. And so how does God want to use you today? How could you put yourself as an instrument in his hand? I was noting here on the text line, part of our conversation that we had a few minutes ago with Bill English, and he said, the thing about traction, you can't get any traction if there's not any friction. And Walt popped in on the text line and said, hey, I'm in a situation at my church where, we need to get some traction and maybe God needs me to be the friction. So would you pray for me? So I'm mindful of that. You're going to get used by God today. He wants to use you. He wants to use you according to his will. So today, may the friction that's necessary to do the refining work in you and maybe through you as iron sharpens iron out there in the marketplace of ideas and in your families and in your workplace, may you be blessed as you allow God to use you, again, as an instrument, as a tool in his very capable hands. We started today acknowledging the presence of God, acknowledging that he is very present. And so I'll just conclude today where we started. Where do you need God to show up and tend to your heart today? Not just geographically, but maybe the social location as well. Where do you need God to show up and be God today? And then let's acknowledge he's already there. God is present. Our Growing Your Faith verses of the day come from Psalm 46, verses 1 and 2. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in times of trouble. So we will not fear, even though the earthquakes come and the mountains crumble into the heart of the sea. We are going to acknowledge that God is God, and we are going to be still and know that truth. Amen? I want you to go forth today as ambassadors of the King and the kingdom, agents of grace, ministers of God's reconciling love. My friend, you're blessed, so put yourself in the posture of receiving the blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Let's remember, people don't need another piece of our mind, but they very much need the peace of the mind of Christ. And you're just the person to give it to them. Have a great day, and God bless. Thanks for listening to The Reconnect with Carmen LaBerge. Let us know how we can help you more fully reconnect the eternal with the everyday. We want to walk with you throughout your journey of discipleship, so let's connect. You can text us at 877-933-2484 or connect with us online at myfaithradio.com and on all our social media. I look forward to connecting with you as we each seek to reconnect the eternal with the everyday.